By 2015, the Batman Arkham series had already cemented itself as the greatest series of superhero games, and with the fourth installment releasing in 2015 for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, the series would once again push the boundaries on what superhero games could be. Batman Arkham Knight was released 9 years ago in 2015, and still to this day is considered one of the greatest superhero games of all time. But I've never played it before, so it's about time I change that. Welcome back to Batman Arkham Fun, where today I'll finally be playing Batman Arkham Knight. As I mentioned, this game released in 2015 and is currently the latest entry in the core Arkham series. There have of course been some VR spin-offs and this thing released since then, but when it comes to your traditional no-nonsense Arkham games, this is still the newest one. And to round out Arkham-thon, it's about time I play this, and it's gonna be the second time I get to use my PS5 this year. As always, let's dive right into the story. The game begins with the cremation of the Joker. Good to see we're already milking him again. After that, we have a fiery title card where Commissioner Gordon proclaims that this is how the Batman dies. Fast forward to Halloween Eve in Gotham, and a voiceover from Gordon talks about how ever since the Joker died, crime had pretty much stopped in Gotham. A cop heads to a local diner, and inside, he tends to a complaint of a patron smoking. When he tries to tell the patron to stop, the patron turns around revealing he's a Scarecrow goon. All of a sudden, the cop has a hallucination and fires away at the crowd before blacking out. Scarecrow broadcasts to the city that he's gonna gas Gotham, forcing a mass evacuation of the city. The next night, all there was left in Gotham was cops, criminals, and the Batman. Batman meets with Gordon where they briefly converse about the night ahead. Also, important for later, Gordon thinks Barbara left the city, but he doesn't know she stayed behind to help Batman. Batman then goes to save a random officer, and after doing so, he chases after a military vehicle in the Batmobile. Batman catches the driver and interrogates him, and the driver tells Batman that Scarecrow is working out of a penthouse. So Batman goes there and rescues Poison Ivy. After taking out some militia tanks, Batman takes Poison Ivy to the GCPD headquarters to lock her up. Batman then heads out and pinpoints Scarecrow's location to Ace Chemicals. As Batman starts to enter the compound, he runs into a weird face who wants vengeance. Oracle is able to figure out that the militia works for the mysterious figure, and the mysterious figure goes by the Arkham Knight. Batman then infiltrates the compound, saving workers to get codes to get inside. Once inside, Batman comes face to face with Scarecrow, who basically tells him that they're capturing Barbara, and a quick communication with Barbara proves that to be true. Scarecrow also rigs the building to blow up and spread his chemicals all over Gotham, and Batman works to lower the blast range. As Batman is moving things, he turns around and comes face to face with the Joker, who shoots him in the head. Cut to a brief flashback where Gordon visits an abandoned movie studio where a bunch of Joker wannabes are locked up. Batman tells him that when the Joker sent his blood to hospitals across Gotham during the events of Arkham City, the blood actually ended up getting injected into some people. This ended up affecting them and making them think they're the Joker. There's one who was infected but showed immunity to the blood, and Jim also realizes there's one empty cell, which belongs to Batman. Since, remember, Joker put his blood in Batman. Batman then regains consciousness and sees the Joker taunting him. Batman escapes from Ace, and once out, he meets up with Gordon where he reveals that Barbara didn't leave the city and has been taken by Scarecrow. So they head to the clock tower, and once inside, Batman has a hallucination where he sees when Barbara became Oracle. The story goes that when Barbara was Batgirl, Joker paid her a visit and shot her in the chest, crippling her. In some interpretations, he unfortunately also did worse, but regardless, this event crippled her, making it impossible for her to continue as Batgirl. So she became Oracle and helped Batman from a distance. Batman then reconnects with reality inside the clock tower, and once Gordon shows up, Batman reveals Barbara has been working for him. This naturally pisses off Gordon, and he storms off, now resenting Batman. Batman then tracks where they took Barbara, seeing she was taken by the Arkham Knight. He follows the Knight's trail to a hidden base, and inside, Batman runs into the Knight and chases his tank. He catches the tank but realizes that the Knight used a voice modulator to trick him. A soldier tells Batman he's gone to see Penguin, so Batman heads to see the Birdman. Batman meets Nightwing, who's already been working on tracking Penguin, and with Nightwing's help, Batman finds and interrogates Penguin, who reveals that Scarecrow is working with Simon Stagg. Batman infiltrates and works his way through Simon Stagg's airship, where he learns that Stagg has been working on a machine to flood Gotham with Scarecrow's fear toxin. Batman then comes face to face with Scarecrow again, who sprays him with his toxin, which causes Joker to briefly take over Bruce, and Batman hallucinates himself shooting Scarecrow dead. As I mentioned, this was a hallucination, and Scarecrow escapes with the machine. Scarecrow then reveals he has Barbara trapped in his penthouse, so Batman heads there and sees Barbara shoot herself. While distraught about her death, Batman quickly picks himself up and heads to the GCPD to get Ivy to help him stop the cloudburst, since he learns she was immune to Scarecrow's toxin at the beginning of the game. Ivy has Batman awaken an ancient tree to stop the cloudburst, and after doing so, Batman uploads information about the Arkham Knight's militia to the movie studio. In the studio, Alfred breaks down that the militia has radar towers blocking them from seeing where the cloudburst is. He also talks with Tim, who's busy working on curing the new Jokers. Batman Batman takes out the malicious equipment, then heads to the clock tower to see if they can now find the Cloudburst. Batman then hears that the movie studio is under attack by Harley, who wants to free the new Jokers. Batman heads to the studio and works with Tim to take down and save the new Jokers, and while going from area to area in the studio, Batman sees flashback of Joker torturing Jason Todd. Now in the comics, Jason was another Robin who was kidnapped and tortured by Joker. Batman thought Joker killed him, but Jason survived and took the mantle of Red Hood.
Wow. And knowing all that, I wonder who the Arkham Knight is.
After stopping Harley, Tim and Batman head to the main room where they find all the Jokers dead, killed by the one who seemed immune. He then kills himself, and Tim discovers that Bruce is the last Joker. Batman then seemingly locks himself away, but this was another hallucination, as in reality, he locked Tim in the cell. Batman heads out and Scarecrow unleashes the Cloudburst on Gotham, and Batman works to help keep Ivy's plants alive, and he finds, takes on, and destroys the Cloudburster. He tries to confront the Arkham Knight, but he gets away, so Batman then heads to Ivy, who dies in his arms, but her life essence goes to her plants, which helps purify Gotham from the Cloudburst. Batman then heads to the GCPD to decipher a transmission, which ends up being from Gordon. Batman tracks it to the Arkham Knight's headquarters, where he fights him in this really stupid fucking machine. After destroying the machine, Batman finds and rescues Gordon before coming face to face with the Knight again, who then reveals himself to be Jason Todd.
Cause we really didn't see that coming.
Cut to a brief Predator section with Batman taking on Jason, and he ultimately escapes again. Batman then heads to the roof with Gordon, and they have a moment where they rekindle their relationship, but then it doesn't matter, as when they come face to face with Scarecrow, Jim turns the gun on Batman. Scarecrow worked out a deal with Jim where he'd free Barbara if Jim betrayed Batman. Jim shoots Batman off the building, and Scarecrow pushes Barbara off as well, but Batman saves her, as Jim intentionally shot Batman in his armored chest. After taking on the militia again, Batman takes Barbara back to the GCPD where she sets up camp. Batman heads to the clock tower to stop Scarecrow from stealing information, then he heads back to the GCPD, which is ambushed by the militia. Batman fends them off and then heads to the movie studio, where he sees that Tim has been taken by Scarecrow as well. Scarecrow tells Batman to head to a storage depot where he will reveal his identity, so Batman heads there and gets in a truck to be taken to Scarecrow. On the way there, he has a hallucination where the truck crashes into Crime Alley, and he takes on a horde of Jokers. Batman connects back to reality where the truck takes him to Arkham Asylum, and there, Scarecrow straps him up to the same dolly Joker was at the beginning of Asylum and takes him to where Jim and Tim are being held. Scarecrow has Jim remove Batman's cowl, as Scarecrow reveals Bruce's face to the whole city. Scarecrow then injects Bruce with more fear toxin, and Bruce falls into another hallucination where he's now the Joker wanting to be killed by other villains. A Joker-mobile comes in and destroys the place, and the game then turns into a third-person shooter as Joker goes around and kills the other villains. Then back in reality, Scarecrow still tries to taunt Bruce, but the Joker side of him responds. Scarecrow injects him with more fear toxin, further cementing Joker's control of Bruce, and Joker then goes through a first-person section where he sees everything about him crumbling. His small, neglected gravestone, nobody at his funeral, a radio show not knowing who the Joker is, and in a foggy area, a bunch of Batman statues randomly appear, with one containing an actual Batman. Joker then comes face to face with a cell that contains Batman, and you take control of Batman again, beating Joker into the cage, symbolizing how Bruce is locking the Joker away in his mind. Back in reality, Bruce regains control and shows no fear, even with a gun pointed at his head. Bruce is then saved by Jason, and Bruce grabs Scarecrow, injecting him with his own toxin. Scarecrow then freaks out and Jim takes him out, and Batman then has one final heart-to-heart with Jim before heading back into the night. Now, the main story ends here as you defeat Scarecrow, but the true ending doesn't come until you've completed enough side quests. I'll go more in depth on this later, but once you've completed at least 7 side quests, Bruce can retire for the night. He heads back to Wayne Manor with a massive crowd outside, and after entering the manor, seconds later it explodes, seemingly killing him and Alfred. A special post-credit scene unlocked after 100%ing the game provides a bit of an epilogue as well. Tim and Barbara are getting married, and a familiar scenario of a rich family with a child is seen entering an alleyway. Criminals try to mug them, but they see a familiar silhouette on top of a nearby building. They act tough, claiming they aren't scared because Batman is dead, but then... it seems to be implied that Bruce survived and now uses Scarecrow's fear gas against criminals, and that concludes Batman Arkham Knight.
Huh.
The story of Arkham Knight is pretty damn good. It's longer and deeper than any other story in the series, and there's a lot to go through. But overall, I like it a lot. Scarecrow was a good choice for a villain, and he definitely felt like a threat in this game. While the Arkham Knight was a cool concept, early on it was way too obvious that it was just Jason. The moment the Knight starts revealing he knows all about Batman, it's so obvious that it's him. And after he reveals himself, he just kinda disappears. He of course briefly shows up towards the end to save Bruce, and he got a DLC expansion, but in the main game, he has that small appearance, then disappears for the rest of the game. I like how this time around, we see a lot more of Batman working with others. Tim, Barbara, Gordon, Dick. As I mentioned in Origins, that game started dabbling with the concept of Bruce putting everyone he works with in danger, and we see that expanded upon a ton here. Barbara, Jim, and Tim are all taken by Scarecrow at some point, and also Joker of course crippled Barbara and seemingly killed Jason. And speaking of the Joker, his consciousness being so prominent was definitely somewhat controversial. People were tired of the Joker being the main star of the show, but I felt like he was handled well here. He exists in Batman's psyche and Batman's psyche alone. It's fun to see him constantly react to everything going on, and it leads to some awesome moments when Bruce starts hallucinating. And the final segment where you take control of Joker as he battles for relevancy in Batman's mind is brilliant. I like Joker's inclusion here, as I felt it was a great follow-up to City and a great resolution to him and Bruce's relationship in this series. What I didn't like though was the whole Harley section at the movie studio. I like the whole new Joker's idea, but when Harley showed up and hijacked the game for an hour, I was so annoyed. It was a tad cool as you explore various movie genre sets. There's a fun little stealth section with a song, but overall, it's a total pace breaker and ends up feeling like padding, which is my main criticism with the story here. Now, the prior Arkham games weren't innocent from their own issues with padding, but it's especially bad here. Things like the whole movie studio segment and many Batmobile segments, which I'll elaborate on later, but many of them just drag on and feel unnecessary. After the Scarecrow unleashes the Cloudburster, the Batmobile takes some damage, so you have to go all the way back to Simon Stagg's airship to get this thing to repair it. There was just numerous points of unnecessary padding that added nothing, and I feel like the game would have been better without. And of course, a huge catalyst for that padding was the Batmobile, one of the most love it or hate it parts of Arkham Knight. Conceptually, ripping through Gotham in the Batmobile is an awesome idea, and in execution, it's not bad. Driving the Batmobile is actually really fun. It's smooth and fast, not many things get in your way as you pretty much bash through everything. The issues with the Batmobile come from the combat sections with it. It starts off fine enough with simple enemy tanks that just require you to shoot once, but man, these encounters get old quick. They're not hard, it's just strafing around, avoiding their lines of fire and firing at them, but my god, they get tedious. During the assault on the GCPD, you have to destroy 60 of these. 60! But that's just the standard tanks, because when you get to the Cobra tanks, ugh! The Cobra tanks require you to sneak up behind them and wait for this reticle to fully fill up, and it feels like it takes forever. And you also have to hope it doesn't turn around and spot you, because if it does, you have to reapproach it from behind. It's so tedious and boring and so overused. At many points, Alfred would just be like, "Sir, they're deploying more Cobra tanks," and I'm just like,
you know what? Fuck this. Gotham can fend for itself.
The combat sections with the Batmobile really hindered my enjoyment of these sections. Not only are they incredibly tedious and unfun, but they're also so unnecessary. It truly does feel like padding for the sake of padding, because this game would be no worse if it was shorter and didn't have these segments. As a matter of fact, it would be better. And then there's the Cloudburster battle. Oh my god. It starts off with you having to destroy a bunch of Cobra tanks, which is my favorite thing in the world. Then you have to sneak up on it multiple times, each time hitting a different part of the cannon. But after you hit it, you have to fall back as it chases you. And while this chase is fine the first time, you end up doing it multiple times and it gets so redundant and tedious. And once you destroy the cannon, oh my god, focus all firepower on that damn thing to destroy it once and for all. It's such a tedious and unfun fight, man. And speaking of unfun fights in the Batmobile, how about destroying the Arkham Knight? What the fuck is that? This dude really just has a giant fucking drill. What the actual hell? After raiding his base, you end up in a tunnel construction area where the Arkham Knight chases you in this... I don't even know what you call this. But he chases you and you have to drive through these side tunnels avoiding all of these obstacles, and my god is this part hard. Avoiding everything is so stupidly difficult. It requires precise control of the Batmobile, which can be hard to get at times. But if you finish each section, you'll jump from this vantage point and the Knight's tank will conveniently hit bombs planted on the side of these tunnels. What kind of construction area places bombs at tunnel exits. Everything about this fight is so stupid and so hard to take seriously. Jason reveals his identity in the next scene, but it's so hard to take seriously considering he was just driving this. I've been so negative about the Batmobile, which is a shame because I think driving it was fun and I like its inclusion. It's cool to be able to drive it in an open world Batman game. There are some sections that use it in very creative ways, but unfortunately at the same time, so much of its playtime is used doing the same unfun things over and over again. I don't hate the Batmobile per se, I more so hate how it was used in most of the game. When it's used as a mode of transportation or puzzle solving, it's great. When it's used as a combat section for padding, it's infuriating. Overall, I like it, but it is flawed beyond belief. But still, I'm glad it's here as it added some extra flavor. But honestly, considering how the gameplay has changed, I don't think it was crazy necessary. With the leap to a new console generation, Arkham Knight took full advantage of it. The free flow combat this time around is on a whole new level. It's so free, it's so wavy, it's so alive. It's like you took the combat from the first few games and poured hot butter on it. And I mean that in a positive way. Pouring hot butter on something sounds like a bad thing. God, that was a stupid thing for me to say. But the combat just feels so alive. It truly does peak in this game. But one thing, I did find some frustrations, mainly with how this game locks you onto enemies. Some enemies have little quirks that make attacking them harder. The medics have this ability to revive enemies you've already knocked out, which is a cool concept, and it added their difficulty. Some enemies can charge them up with electricity, and if you hit them, they'll shock you. You have to use your bat claw on them to defuse the electricity, but so many times I try to use the claw on them, but it targets another enemy. But then when I try to actually hit an enemy, it targets a shocked medic. I've found things like this happening a lot in larger battles. All the enemies get in each other's way, and it can feel unfair at points. But looking past that, the combat here is so fun. Predator sections are also back, of course, and they're mostly the same. There are some cool ideas, like many areas have entrances to vents towards the ceiling that'll take you down to underfloor gates. And also, fear multi-takedowns. You can take down a whole group of enemies in quick succession with this move, which is really damn cool. The combat and Predator sections are great upgrades here, and it's just so fun in general. Past that, this game is pretty much the same structure as prior games, a guided Metroidvania in an open world with various smaller areas. But one way this game really stands apart is how this game is constantly nudging you to do side quests. At many points in the story, you're given the option to continue the story or do some side quests, and as I mentioned while recounting the story, doing the side quests this time around is very beneficial as that's how you actually beat the game. The concept is that with all normal civilians out of Gotham, many of Batman's enemies now roam the streets. Most side quest storylines have an enemy attached to it, and you end those quests with catching the perpetrator. Now, one interesting thing is that Arkham Knight doesn't necessarily have boss fights.
And usually, this is the part where I talk about each boss fight, but considering that this game doesn't really have any boss fights, I'm gonna talk about every side quest instead. What the fuck is happening to me?
The Line of Duty. This has you saving a bunch of firemen who have been taken and spread across the city. It's pretty simple, just find each one and complete the combat or predator scenario to rescue them. The Perfect Crime. All throughout Gotham, you find bandaged corpses hung up around the city with a spotlight on them and opera music playing around them. It's genuinely so creepy and unsettling. You use detective mode to scan different parts of each victim to identify them and track down the perpetrator, who is Professor Pig. Cue a fight where you take down his goons and then bring him in. A pretty solid quest line. Riddler's Revenge. This one is just the Riddler trophy quest line. Collect the trophies and solve the riddles to progress, but you can never pay me to do these. Occupy Gotham has you go around taking out the militia watchtowers. I don't think I bother doing any of these. Armored and Dangerous, another militia-based quest line where you go around and stop the militia's arm carriers. Campaign for Disarmament. There's a bunch of mines across the city, detonate them all. Man, these get boring. Creature of the Night. Okay, this one is pretty good. As you're grappling through the city, this happens. After this, you can find Man-Bat flying around each island, and you have to glide into him, knocking him to the ground each time. As the quest goes on, you figure out what happened to him, and the quest line ends with you curing him. Honestly, the best one so far. Gotham on Fire, this sees you chasing down Firefly a handful of times. It's alright. Gunrunner, this has you track and follow Penguin's vans to his hideout, then you infiltrate and destroy each hideout's weapon caches. Heir to the Cowl, throughout Gotham you find Azrael, who's determined to become Batman's successor. You do some AR combat challenges as him where you can't take any damage, and the quest line ends with Batman doing research on Azrael and seeing that he actually wants to kill Batman. A decent questline as well. Two-Face Bandit. Two-Face robs a bunch of banks and you stop each robbery, ending with you ultimately taking him down. Friend in Need. Lucius Fox remains in Gotham to help upgrade the Batmobile, and at one point in the night, Bruce comes to visit him. but it ends up not being Bruce. It's Hush disguised as Bruce. Eventually the real Bruce shows up, shows Hush that Bruce is Batman, then knocks him out. Honestly, this was kinda sorta a waste of Hush. A side quest with him had way more potential that I feel was wasted here. On the roads, clearing out militia vehicles, count me the fuck out, and Lamb to the Slaughter, Jack Ryder has gone missing, so you track him down and stop some weird ceremony he's a part of. It's whatever.
I actually played and talked about the side quests. What is going on with me?
I love how Knight handled the side quests, forcing you to do some in order to actually beat the game, but I appreciate that you only have to do 7. There are 14 in the base game, which means you only have to do half of them and can skip over the other half if you just want to beat the game, like me. But I like these, as these let you face more iconic Batman foes, which the main story does lack. But again, who cares because you can face them here. And hey, going for 100%, there's so much stuff to do. This game is stacked with content, and I haven't even talked about challenge mode yet. Oh my god. I stated how I haven't necessarily been a challenge mode guy, but Knight is the closest I've been to being one. There is so much here. There are 8 playable characters here, which is insane. Batman, Catwoman, Robin, Nightwing, Azrael, Harley, Batgirl, Red Hood, all playable here, which is crazy. There are of course plenty of combat maps and predator maps, giving challenge mode here so much content, and past that you have Batmobile challenges. It's mainly just races, but they're so fun, with tracks based on the 1966 TV series and Tim Burton's films. There is so much to challenge mode here, and I love it so much.
Well, I finally played Batman Arkham Knight, and it's really good.
I think Arkham Knight is objectively the best game in the series. The gameplay here peaks in so many regards, and the amount of content is unmatched by the other games. And while I'll always prefer City and maybe even Origins, Knight is still an absolutely sublime game in so many ways. As frustrated as I could get with the Batmobile sections, everything else around it was so well done, it's easy to forgive. And as the final installment in the mainline Arkham series, it was a really good game to end it on. Yeah, we'll see how that pans out.
And just like that, I've replayed and talked about the 4 main Arkham games. But just because I've done that, doesn't mean I'm finished.
Before I conclude Arkham-thon, I want to spend more time focusing on the legacy of the series, its influence on the genre, the current state of the series, and even some of the insanity it's caused.
Yes, I've talked about the games, but this series is so much more than that. And I want to talk about how one of my favorite game series led to the greatest fucking subreddit on Earth.